We live in interesting times for the headlines. Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles on Friday clarified that the term community quarantine is the more appropriate term to describe the government's latest move to contain the spread of COVID-19. Global stock markets suffer historic falls as panic spreads over the spiraling coronavirus crisis. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's wife has tested positive for novel coronavirus, while assuring the public the Canadian Prime Minister is fine. And we'll bring you updates on the coronavirus status from our EBC correspondents in Canada, Spain, Hawaii, and San Francisco. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us, and now to the news. Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles clarified that the term community quarantine is the more appropriate term to describe the government's latest move to contain the spread of the coronavirus or COVID-19. This as panic struck Metro Manila residents as several media firms labeled the recent government pronouncement as a lockdown. Let's listen in.
This is not a lockdown kasi iba yung connotation ng lockdown eh. Pag sinasabi mong lockdown, ang daming interpretation eh. Hindi naman siya a technical meaning. But if you say quarantine, may technical, medical meaning po yan. And that's why we avoided using the word lockdown. Kasi ang imagination ng iba, pag lockdown, wala nang cargo, wala nang papasok na food supplies. Kaya na nagpapanik. So deliberately, we don't use the word lockdown because kung ano-anong lumalabas sa social media na ibig sabihin ng quote-unquote lockdown. So perhaps with all due respect to Senator and Senate President Soto, baka kasi yung ibig niya sabihin ng lockdown is yung connotation nga na yun na wala na cut off na yung food supplies natin, etc. Sarado na lahat, no?
Meanwhile, Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez assured the residents in Metro Manila that there will be uninterrupted delivery of basic supplies. The regional office of the Department of Trade and Industry on Friday also issued a price freeze on basic commodities in all business establishments. Department of Trade and Industry is also proposing an executive order to increase its powers to monitor establishments to deter hoarding and overpricing. Lopez gave the guarantee after President Duterte also ordered the suspension of domestic land, air, and sea travel to and from Manila from March 15 to April 14, subject to the daily review of the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, or IATF-EID. Let's listen in again.
Let me just reiterate, at least on the private sector, the business sector, work continues, may trabaho po, and precisely that is the reason why we have to keep it, para ho ang trabaho, ang pangkabuhayan ng ating mga kababayan will continue. May continuity po, no? So merong opisina, may mga restaurants, mga malls, lahat po nung mga napupuntahan natin ay bukas po yon. At dahil bukas po yon, definitely yung mga pag-supply ho, the supply of goods, both food and non-food, mga cargoes can move in and out of Metro Manila. And because of that, the importance of that is to secure the continuity in supply. Importante ho, may supply parati tayo sa ating lugar. Kahit kinwarantin po yan, there's food, even yung mga ibang pangangailangan natin, personal goods, personal care products, etc. So, yun ang importante dyan. And so, meron hong i-detalye na lang sa guidelines how we will implement this, but generally speaking, basta cargo ho ang dala ng non-driver, at pahinante ay allowed po yan. Pati paglabas nila, may delivery receipt naman po. There are ways to prove na yun po ay cargo, may mga cargo deliveries na ginawa in Metro Manila. So, importante po dito, no business disruption, and therefore, supply of goods will be assured, and at the same time, prices will be assured. Ganun din po sa mga ibang opisina na bukas din. Banks will be open, offices, factories, mga manufacturing operations will continue. Ang in-encourage na lang po would be a flexible work arrangement, especially sa offices. That doesn't mean walang trabaho yung wala sa office. Kasi nga, with the technology now, we all know, may maraming nakakatrabaho kahit mula sa bahay. At so yun ang encourage because the bottom line is less movement of people. Banks will be open at saka mga stock markets, lahat po yan, tuloy-tuloy. As mentioned, cargos, food, non-food will continue. On the related item, sa mga produkto po, as you know, nag-declare po ng public health emergency, so immediately nagkaroon po tayo ng price freeze for 60 days. Ito po would be true for food, yung pong mga nasa SRP natin, of course, mga medicines, medical devices. So naka-price freeze po yan for 60 days. Sa DA, may mga covered na mga agriculture products na kasama dyan. Rice, corn, cooking oil, fresh, dried, and other marine products, fresh eggs, fresh pork, beef, poultry meat, sugar, tsaka mga fresh vegetables. Yung iba nga ho dito nalagay na sa under SRP. Nung dati ho tayong nagpaliwanag. Isa lang hong papaalala rin natin para ho intensify ang paghahanap sa mga nagsasamantala, mga hoarders, profiteers. Nagkaroon po tayo ng pagkikipagtulungan sa mandato na rin po ng ating Pangulo na isama ang DILG, ang PNP, Kapulisan, at ang NBI para mahanap natin, matukoy natin sino talaga yung mga negosyante na nagsasamantala, nag-iimbentaryo ng malaki, hoarding sa kanilang mga warehouse.
Meanwhile, Trade Secretary Mon Lopez also advised the public not to panic buy because there are enough food and household supplies, as we heard earlier. He also said that panic buying would only result in artificial shortage. Mr. Lopez advised the public to stop hoarding unnecessary items. He also warned the public to not hoard supplies because supplies would deplete fast, and this would disadvantage other people. And for those stubborn consumers, he said, quote, "The customer is not always right." Take a look.
Sa mga supermarkets, again, we remind the public not to panic buy. Huwag mong panic buying dahil lalo ho talagang mag-artificial shortage, hindi ho totoong shortage, artificial, for the day, pagka may namamakyaw. Mauubos talaga yung laman ng grocery or yung shelf. Yan po ay siguradong mare-replenish dahil maraming stock sa mga manufacturers. Huwag ho sila magpanik. Mauubos na ang pera nila sa wallet nila. Hindi pa ho mauubos ang supply ng alcohol dito sa Pilipinas. Kaya huwag ho sila mag-apura dyan. At saka intindihin po natin yung mga kababayan natin na nakapila rin doon or may gusto rin bilhin yan. Kaya ngayon, naglabas din kami ng directive na sa mga supermarkets ay limitahan yung number of bottles. 2 bottles lang bawat mamimili ang i-issue na sa pagbenta nitong mga alcohol. Kung mga alcohol, medicines, marami rin yung stocks. Kaya wag din tayong mag-apura o mag-hoard din yan. No. No.
Yeah.
Customer is not always right.
Yes.
Pagdating sa ganyan na may rule na tayo. At the supermarket, binilinan pa ng DTI, ipapairal nila yung rule na yan. Hindi po limitless, unlimited, ang customer is always right.
Yan
Hindi, bentahan nila ng 2. Oo. Bentahan nila ng 2. Yun ang limit.
Ayaw nga, sir, eh.
Diba?
Okay.
Simple lang. Labas na sila para may makapasok.
Yeah, because they're making a scene inside the supermarket also.
May security guard po sila, ipalabas po nila yan.
He also discouraged the public from buying vital commodities from online resellers who are overpricing products. Meanwhile, the Quezon City government on Friday declared a state of calamity to prevent the further spread of the coronavirus cases in the city and also to empower barangays to implement measures to control infections. Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte announced this a day after President Duterte imposed a community quarantine in the whole of Metro Manila to address rising COVID-19 cases in the country. Take a look.
This is the first time in many years, for as long as I can remember, that Quezon City actually declared a state of calamity. No? But this was something we believe was important. First and foremost, because the President has himself declared a state of public health emergency here in the Philippines. And this gives us now a basis to declare a state of calamity here in our city. Now, why is this important? It's because
Now, as she said earlier, this will allow the city to utilize a portion of its Quick Response Funds, or QRF, for the procurement and distribution of goods and services to fight COVID-19. Now, Ms. Belmonte also said that the city government already has a resolution from the city's Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council to back the declaration of the state of calamity. She also said that the primary basis is the declaration of the President of a public health emergency in the country and the resolution declaring a community quarantine in the whole of Metro Manila. Ms. Belmonte noted that Quezon City is the largest city of Metro Manila. Its area, in fact, covers 25% of the national capital region, she said. She also said that she has the support of the 142 barangays in Quezon City in her declaration of a state of calamity. Now, with this declaration, she said that there would be more intensified and extensive monitoring of persons under investigation, as well as the persons under monitoring in the city. Barangays will also be enabled to do extensive and strengthened contact tracing. She also said mass gatherings will be prohibited as well. Quezon City has at least 5 confirmed COVID-19 cases. A Philippine diplomat in New York has tested positive for the new coronavirus in the first recorded case at the United Nations headquarters in the city. This is according to diplomatic sources. The diplomat, who had last visited the UN on Monday, showed symptoms of flu the following day and saw a doctor. Now, she got the call today that she tested positive for COVID-19, said a letter from the Philippines mission. As of today, said the Philippine mission is in lockdown and all personnel are instructed to self-quarantine. The diplomat works at the UN General Assembly 6th Committee, which deals with legal matters. Let's listen in.
Strongly urges all member states to consider canceling. The Secretary General has taken the decision to cancel all United Nations system-sponsored side events at headquarters from March 16th until the end of April. He also strongly urges all member states to consider canceling all side events for the meetings that they are sponsoring. The Secretary General will be communicating with member states and staff in a short while to update them on the preparation measures the UN has undertaken is to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak. The UN building has been closed to visitors, and the Secretariat has instituted arrangements for staff to telecommute to reduce the population density in the building, thereby reducing the risk of transmission. The Secretary General will always balance the need for the UN to continue to deliver on its activities, for him to continue to do his work, and the need to protect public health.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's wife has tested positive for novel coronavirus, his office said late on Thursday, while assuring the public the Canadian Prime Minister is fine. Canada's leader and his 44-year-old wife announced on Thursday they were self-isolating while she was tested for coronavirus after a public event. Sophie Gregoire Trudeau was tested for COVID-19 today. The test came back positive. The Prime Minister's office said in a statement, adding she would remain in isolation and her symptoms were mild. The Prime Minister is in good health with no symptoms, according to the statement, noting he would also be in isolation for 2 weeks and on the advice of his doctors will not be tested for the virus. It follows several provinces in Canada which so far has reported nearly 150 cases in 6 states and 1 death, unveiling stricter measures to combat the spread of the virus, while sporting events and entertainment galas were also canceled. The Prime Minister would continue his duties, his office said, and would address the country on Saturday. With the coronavirus now classified as a pandemic by the World Health Organization, the Canadian government has stepped up its response. And as Eagle News correspondent Thomas Likeness reports, the number of new cases continues to grow, reaching nearly 100. Take a look.
The Western Canadian province of Alberta has reported 5 new cases, bringing the total in Canada to 98. Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, says all 19 of the cases in the province are travel-related. Hinshaw also says the declaration of coronavirus as a pandemic by the World Health Organization reflects the seriousness of the situation.
COVID-19 is not like other threats we have seen in the past decades. It is more severe than seasonal influenza or the H1 pandemic of 2009, and it is more contagious than viruses like SARS. It can be contained, as has been shown in other countries like Singapore, but it will take an effort of all of us to do so.
Hinshaw says she has some recommendations for travelers returning to Alberta from outside the country.
I'm recommending that all travelers returning to Alberta from anywhere outside of Canada should consider limiting attendance at any large public gatherings, and most importantly, all travelers should closely monitor themselves for symptoms such as fever or cough.
Hinshaw says anyone who has symptoms should contact health authorities and self-isolate until they can be assessed. She recommends that people over 65 and those with chronic health problems should not travel outside of Canada. Now, that's because the global risk is increasing rapidly, and it's difficult to pinpoint just which destinations have the greatest risk. Hinshaw adds that even healthy people should carefully consider their travel plans. Meanwhile, the Canadian government will spend up to $1 billion to offset the impact of the disease. Half that money will go to the healthcare system. The rest goes to businesses and workers who are feeling the impact of the infection. As the infection works its way through the country, it's become the #1 topic of conversation around the water cooler, and there's no escaping its effects. Everything from jobs, conferences, sporting and cultural events, and just everyday life is feeling that impact. In Edmonton, Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News, 1/25.
Thank you, Thomas. Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, said the decision to ban travel from mainland Europe for 30 days was the right public health call. Take a look.
To do it, and it was the right public health call. And here's the numerical reason why. If you look back early on, Chinese travelers who were infected seeded not only the United States, but countries in Europe, including Italy. If you look today at the majority of cases that are new cases, not old ones, new cases throughout the world, the majority of them are from Europe to other countries. If you look in the United States, at states that have new cases, the majority of them are coming from that region. It was based on that the travel restriction was suggested and accepted.
Finally, I am calling on Congress to provide Americans with immediate payroll tax relief. Hopefully, they will consider this very strongly.
When asked if he thinks the Trump administration will enact more travel bans, Dr. Fauci said he thinks it would be seriously considered. In a primetime address from the Oval Office, Mr. Trump outlined a series of measures intended to tackle the virus and its economic impact. He said he would hold travelers from Europe other than Britain for 30 days and asked Congress to support measures like a payroll tax cut. Hopefully, we can get it back together very quickly, U.S. President Donald Trump tells reporters, just 1 day after he announced a suspension on arrivals from mainland Europe. Speaking ahead of a meeting in the Oval Office with Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar, President Trump admitted that his travel ban, which hits 26 European countries, will have a big impact on the economy. In front of a crowd of reporters, Prime Minister Varadkar urges President Trump to work together on treatments, tests, and vaccines. Let's listen in.
People. Do you have any idea what the overall economic impact of these travel restrictions will be?
Well, it'll be a big impact, but it's a bigger impact, and it's also a human impact, which is more important, frankly, than the financial. When you lose thousands of additional lives, very good, and hopefully we can get it back together very quickly in terms of reestablishing with China. That's on track to something happen fairly quickly because they've made a lot of progress over the last 3 or 4 weeks. And certainly with Europe, we think we can go hopefully very quickly. They have some hot spots that are really bad, but they'll get them better.
But as you know, it's a virus that's gone pandemic. It's all over the world, knows no borders, knows no nationalities, and I think we all need to work together in the world on this. And America in particular, you're the richest country in the world. You've got great scientists, great companies, great universities, and we need them working on treatments, working on tests, and working on a vaccine, because that's what will get us on top of this.
We shake hands today, and we looked at each other and we said, what are we going to do? You know, it's sort of a weird feeling.
I think
we said it at the same time.
Staying in the U.S., Broadway suspended performances for a month as the world's most famous theater district was hit by a ban on large public gatherings imposed on New Yorkers to stem the coronavirus pandemic. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo earlier told reporters only schools, hospitals, nursing homes, and mass transit facilities would be allowed gatherings of more than 500 people from Friday because of the pandemic, which has so far infected more than 1,300 in the U.S. The capacity for seated venues in New York is to be reduced by 50%. Even if the occupancy is normally 500 or less. Mayor Bill de Blasio declared a state of emergency in the city, saying it could have 1,000 COVID-19 cases by next week, a significant spike from the government tally of 95. The Broadway closure is a major blow for a tourism income stream that brought in more than $26.7 million last week alone.
This state is not going to be able to compensate businesses for lost revenue. It would bankrupt the state. First of all, the tests are basically irrelevant at this point, right? You're not going to find a sample of how many people actually have the disease with the tests. That horse is out of the barn. What you're doing is identifying people who are positive so you can isolate them. That's what the tests are doing. What do we have to do today? What do we have to do tomorrow? Plan this emergency health management system. More testing, reduce the density, have the hospitals ready. That's what we have to do. Let's focus on what we have to do, and let's keep the anxiety to a realistic level to the extent we...
Meanwhile, performances close after 5 p.m. local time Thursday and will not start up again until April 13, according to the Broadway League. In France, President Emmanuel Macron, in television address to the nation late on Thursday, announced a range of stringent measures to slow the spread of the virus. He ordered the closing of schools and universities from Monday until further notice. Education Minister Jean-Michel Blanquer told France Interradio that the school closures would last until at least the 2-week holidays, which begin on April 4 in Paris, but end-of-year exams were still scheduled to go ahead. President Macron also urged people aged 70, over 70, to stay at home and announce measures to keep the economy afloat during the crisis. He promised compensation for workers who are temporarily laid off for the duration of the measure. The president acknowledged the anxiety of small business owners and the tourism and culture industries. He said that public transport will not be interrupted because to stop it would be to block everything. It would also stop the possibility to provide health care where needed. But those who can limit their use of trains, metros, and buses should do so. Non-essential medical procedures will be postponed to free up space and personnel needed to care for those in urgent need. Despite the measures, President Macron said municipal elections throughout the country will go ahead this Sunday. The coronavirus has already killed 61 people here in France and infected 2,876. Latin American states preparing for the onslaught of the new coronavirus on Thursday tightened restrictions on travel links to Europe as the region recorded its third death in the outbreak. Fears over the pandemic swept through Latin American markets, continuing a global rout that began in Asia early Thursday and forced the region's biggest carrier to slash flights. The Pan American Health Organization, or PAHO, warned governments to get ready to cope with the pandemic. Let's listen in.
Basically, the main challenge is now that it's been declared a pandemic. The countries need to prepare the hospitals and health posts in the countries because it's not going to be one case or two cases. The meaning of the pandemic means that countries need to implement mitigation measures to ensure that hospitals across the territories or the countries are ready to deal with coronavirus cases. Difficult to predict that one. At the moment, there are cases in many countries in Latin America now, like 15 cases in Argentina, in Chile, 30 cases in Brazil. Any moment we can see community transmission. We cannot rule out there will not be community transmission. And it's not a failure. Let me clarify that. It's not a failure. It's the natural history of a virus, new virus that is spreading across the world.
Though still low in terms of global figures, the number of cases in Latin America grew steadily to reach more than 250 in 15 countries with 3 deaths. The latest came in Guyana, where a 52-year-old local woman died. She had tested positive shortly after arriving from the U.S. last week. Following Venezuela and Bolivia, Paraguay and Peru became the latest countries to suspend flights from Europe, where Italy's death toll from the virus soared past 1,000. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro said he will know in the next few hours if he has contracted the new coronavirus after a top aide tested positive for the disease following a trip on which both met with U.S. President Trump. The 64-year-old Bolsonaro revealed the news in a live Facebook transmission in which he was wearing a face mask. I'm using a mask, he said, because when we returned from our recent trip to the U.S., one of the people that traveled with U.S. had tests in Sao Paulo and it came up positive, said Bolsonaro. The far-right leader's communications chief, Fabio Weingarten, tested positive for COVID-19 after last weekend's trip to the U.S., during which both men met with President Trump at his Florida resort. And here's some good news. South Korea, once the largest coronavirus outbreak outside China, saw its newly recovered patients exceed fresh infections for the first time today, as it reported its lowest number of new cases for 3 weeks. Take a look. The South confirmed 110 new cases on Thursday, the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said, taking the total to 7,979. But 177 fully recovered patients were released the same day, it added. South Korea has an advanced medical system, widely available to all, and has embarked on a huge coronavirus testing drive. Officials said the number of new cases in Daegu, the southern city of the center of the outbreak, and the neighboring province of North Gyeongsang had declined dramatically. So far, nearly 90% of South Korea's cases have been in 2 regions. Each morning, the government announces how many cases were diagnosed the previous day, and recent figures have been well below the 500 to 600 increases the country was confirming in early March, raising hopes the outbreak is being brought under control. The 110 new cases announced by the KCDC was the lowest such figure since February 21. One more person had died, it said, with the toll rising to 67. And China reported just 8 cases of the coronavirus today, Friday, with no new domestic infections outside the epicenter of Hubei province. The National Health Commission said there were 5 more people infected in Hubei's capital, Wuhan, where the virus first emerged in December. The numbers are the lowest daily tally for Wuhan since China started reporting figures in January. 3 more imported cases from overseas were reported, 2 in Shanghai and 1 in Beijing, fueling fears about China's strict containment measures being undone by people coming in from hotspots in other countries. There have now been 88 imported cases. Another 7 people died, bringing the national toll from the disease in mainland China to 3,176. More than 80,000 people have been infected. An American woman who has recovered from the novel coronavirus has a simple message for people who are worried. Don't panic, but do think about the high-risk individuals and stay home if you feel ill. Elizabeth Schneider lives in Seattle, the biggest city of Washington state, which has the most deaths in the U.S. from the disease sweeping the globe. The 37-year-old, who has a PhD in bioengineering, said she was sharing her story to give people a little bit of hope through her own relatively mild experience with the infection, which she treated herself from home. Let's listen in.
So initially, when I got the test results, I was definitely a little shocked. I really did not expect that I would have COVID-19. I think at the time there were only, about 100 cases in Washington, maybe 500 or more cases across the United States. So I thought, wow, I'm really lucky, or rather in this case, rather unlucky. So I had gone to a house party on Saturday, February 22nd at a friend's house here in Seattle. This was really before the large-scale outbreak of coronavirus cases here in Washington state. So, I went to the party, had a great time, didn't think anything of it, and 3 days later, on Tuesday, February 25th, I woke up in the morning and I felt a little groggy, a little bit tired, run down. So I went home, I worked from home the rest of the day, and I ended up taking a nap in the early evening, and I woke up and I had a temperature of 101 degrees. Multiple friends and myself all got sick 3 days after attending a house party here in Seattle, and we all came down with the same symptoms at the same time. Some of my friends went to the doctor. I didn't myself go to the doctor because I ended up feeling fine and recovering on my own, and as I mentioned, I just thought it was the flu. My friends that went to the doctor were tested for flu and tested negative, and they were sent home. All of us were starting to get suspicious that all of us had gotten sick together 3 days after the same party that we all attended. Towards the beginning of my self-isolation, it was fine. I realized I was sick, that I just needed to hunker down and take care of myself and rest. Towards about the middle or the latter half of it, I started getting very restless, and honestly I started getting quite depressed. I live by myself and I was starting to get really, really lonely. It's very hampering when you can't, just go out and drive somewhere and get something to eat, or you can't even really go to the store on your own because number one, you want to stay inside, and number two, you don't feel up to going out to the store. I was so tired, I couldn't even really cook.
It's now been a week since she's felt better, and she has started going out for errands, but is still avoiding large gatherings and continuing to work from home. Schneider said she hoped her example, which will probably be typical of high majority of cases, could comfort others. The message is, she said, don't panic. If you think that you have it, you probably do, you should probably get tested. And if your symptoms aren't life-threatening, simply stay at home, medicate with over-the-counter medicines, drink lots of water, get a lot of rest, and check out the shows she said you want to binge watch. Hand hygiene, either with soap and water or with alcohol-based hand rub, is one of the best ways to avoid getting sick and spreading infections to others. Hand hygiene is an easy, inexpensive, and effective means to prevent the spread of germs and keep everyone healthy. Take a look.
Rub. Hand washing should take you about 1 minute. Use a timer or count from 1 to 10 in each of the following steps. Wet hands with water and apply enough soap to cover all surfaces of the hands. Let the water run smoothly to avoid touching the tap later on. Rub hands palm to palm to obtain a good quantity of foam. Then rub right palm over the back of left hand with interlaced fingers, and vice versa. Rub again palm to palm with fingers interlaced. Rub the back of your fingers to opposing palms with fingers interlocked, repeating this action for each hand. Rub rotationally left thumb clasped in right palm and vice versa. To clean the tips of the fingers, rub rotationally backwards and forwards with clasped fingers of right hand in left palm and vice versa. Rinse hands thoroughly with running water. Dry hands thoroughly with a single-use towel. If the tap is not elbow-operated, use this towel to turn off the tap without touching it directly. Your hands are now clean and safe.
Eagle News, we'll be right back.
When visiting the Philippines, Manila or Quezon City is a popular destination. But oftentimes the hustle and bustle of the city can be more stressful on your vacation. So when you feel the need to reconnect to nature or relax again, there's a beautiful oasis just outside of the city called the Garden at Ciudad de Victoria. Some of the species that you can see here include hydrangea, snapdragon, and stargazers. They're truly beautiful. The gardens at Ciudad de Victoria are so peaceful, tranquil, and beautiful that it's become a haven for young couples and a very popular venue for engagement photos. The next time you want an escape from the big city, the garden at Ciudad de Victoria is a wonderful place to visit.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
In other news, the U.S. military launched airstrikes against a pro-Iranian group in Iraq following the deaths of 2 Americans and a Briton in a rocket attack. U.S. military officials said on Thursday the operation targeted 5 weapons facilities of the Kataib Hezbollah armed faction across Iraq, the Pentagon said in a statement. The strikes were defensive, proportional, and indirect response to the threat posed by Iranian-backed Shia militia groups who continue to attack bases hosting troops that are part of the international coalition fighting Islamic State jihadists. U.S. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper said the U.S. will not tolerate attacks against our people, our interests, or allies. Esper had earlier warned that all options are on the table to respond to the death of the 3 soldiers in a barrage of about 18 rockets on the Taji Air Base on Wednesday. Troops from the U.S. and other countries in the Operation Inherent Resolve coalition reside at this base and have been targets of previous rocket attacks attributed to Iran-backed Iraqi Shiite militia. Wednesday's attack on the Taji Air Base was the 22nd on U.S. installations in Iraq, including the American embassy since late October. While there was no immediate claim of responsibility, Washington has blamed Iran-backed factions from the Hashid al-Shabi network, a state-sponsored umbrella group that includes Kataib Hezbollah, for recent similar violence. All right, to other news now. An Aid to Humanity event launched by the Iglesia Ni Cristo continues. Let's go to Thailand, where our EBC correspondent, Cristel Mapa, reports from the scene of the event.
Amidst the fear of COVID-19 and political unrest here in Thailand, members of Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ, were not hindered to participate in Lingap sa Mamamayan, or Aid to Humanity. This worldwide activity aims to reach communities, to extend help, and more importantly, to share their faith. Members of the religious organization Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ, from different parts of Thailand such as Pattaya, Chonburi, and Metro Bangkok are gathered in the respective venues. Also, members from Phnom Penh, Cambodia invited their friends, colleagues, and relatives as guests to this worldwide activity. The Aid to Humanity that is being conducted by the Church of Christ through Felix Y. Manalo Foundation Worldwide was introduced by showing a video presentation. Guests eagerly watched how the church reached out to poor countries in South Africa and to communities in India. It was followed by the preaching of the Holy Gospel that was led by ministers assigned in each area in which they taught teachings based on the Bible. Goodie bags containing non-perishable items were prepared by church officers and were distributed to every guest. They accepted each goodie bag with smiles and thanks.
Attending sa Church of Christ is that na-discover and I realized nga they help people a lot, especially sa mga poorest country and everything. And I realized nga but Church of Christ is ready to help our fellow people, and also not only in the church but also a lot in the country. So and it feels welcoming sa Church of Christ.
Unang-una po sa lahat, nagpapasalamat po ako sa tao nag-invite po sa akin, si Sister Cecil. At napakinggan ko po ang mga iba't ibang aral tungkol sa Biblia. At nagpapasalamat din po ako sa mga kapwa ko na narito ngayon, na nakikinig at tutulong sa lahat. Nagpapasalamat din po ako sa INC dahil marami po silang natutulungan at sana po magpatuloy po sila. Yun lang po.
Ako po si kapatid ng Kevin Mateo po. Mula po sa lokal langbang na distrito po ng Thailand. Kaysa po kami sa pamamahala na isinagawang aktibidad po na ako po ay nakapag-anyaya ng panauhin po. Nagpapasalamat po kami sa tagapamahalang pangkalahatan po kay kapatid na Eduardo B. Manalo po sa walang sawang paglulunsad po ng mga ganitong aktibidad, kung saan po ay natutulungan po ang ating mga kababayan. Subalit higit po sa lahat yung naipamahagi po namin yung aming pananampalataya po. Salamat po ng marami.
Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, as Executive Minister, continues to encourage every member of the church to help people who are in dire need wherever they are in the world. Reporting from Aid to Humanity in Thailand, I am Cristel Mapa. I am 1 with 25.
Global stock markets suffered historic falls as panic spreads over the spiraling coronavirus crisis that has killed nearly 5,000 and is infecting sports, schools, and society across the planet. Across the world, stock markets saw daily plunges not seen in decades, if ever. London recorded its worst day since the 1987 crash, and Frankfurt its blackest day since 1989, the year the Berlin Wall fell. Paris suffered its worst one-day loss ever. The European Central Bank ramped up its super cheap bank lending program and other stimulus measures, but its failure to lower interest rates sparked further selling. Tokyo, which fell as much as 10% at one point, ended down 6.1%, while Hong Kong was 1.6% lower in the afternoon, having plunged around 7% earlier. Seoul, Bangkok, Manila, and Singapore all managed to cut their losses by more than half, while Mumbai edged higher just hours after a trading halt kicked in because it had fallen more than 9%. Shanghai was down less than 1% as the number of new cases in China, the center of the outbreak, shrinks and people slowly return to work in the worst hit areas. Market strategist Jing-Yi Pan in Singapore said the new coronavirus pandemic is causing a broad sell-off across the market, with energy and tourism sectors amongst the hardest hit. Let's listen in.
SARS this time around, it looks like the coronavirus is really getting to the US as well, and they are reacting in a way that's very similar to how China's market had really unfolded in terms of the reaction and the risk, and that's the kind of thing that we are seeing. So a lot of panic underlying this, but also I think recognition that this thing may be here to stay with us for some time. Health experts have actually noted the likelihood of this really lasting at least through to the end of the year, so that kind of disruption will come with it consequences on the economic side as well. Certainly it's been the case. Asia started off on Monday and the US came online. Likewise, seeing this kind of sell-off picture over there, also triggering the panic about the circuit breaker on the US market on Monday. And again on Thursday, as President Donald Trump also announced that travel ban from Europe to the US. So I think it's quite a bit of a multi-fold hit on sentiment. So selling off, and I just really want to highlight it's really not limited perhaps to the risk assets at this point of time, as we see the likes of gold prices really receding, the havens also affected. Well, so I think what we are seeing across the market is that the sell-off really isn't being very discriminatory. It's a broad sell-off, but of course the worst hit ones, I think certainly we are seeing the likes of energy, this on the back of the plunge in crude oil prices week-to-date basis. I think they're probably the worst right now, and likewise across many of the cyclical sectors, whether you're talking about industrials against the backdrop of worry of demand, and now with Europe and the US really coming down a little bit with the symptoms of the coronavirus hit industries. I think likewise is seeing the case, and of course tourism. The impact itself is going to last. What we are dealing with this time around is a bit of uncertainty, of course, with something that's really unfamiliar, coronavirus risk. So I think on that front, the market is a little bit still figuring in terms of what the central bankers have done, and they have certainly done quite a bit, I would have to say. Whether is it enough against the risk that we are facing at this point of time. So on that end, to some extent, actually, the central bank's moves itself had instead perhaps created a bit of this additional worries as well, and therefore seeing that kind of sell-offs. I think the circuit breakers are definitely necessary, but in terms of whether we should come to the extent where we are going to see a longer shutdown in terms of the market, I'm not too sure in terms of whether that's really a good thing as well, seeing how it could actually also accelerate the panic in the market, that if they're not able to manage their positions in the market, that could incentivize them to even let go of it beforehand. So definitely I think we just have to watch how the things unfold at this point.
A multicultural festival, a concert by pop singer Mariah Carey, and a series of collegiate basketball tournaments. These were supposed to draw thousands of visitors to Hawaii and generate income in the local economy. However, in just 1 week, these events and many more were either postponed or canceled due to the uncertainty over the coronavirus outbreak. And according to experts, Hawaii state government could lose hundreds of millions of dollars as a result. Hawaii correspondent Alfred Asenas provides a recap of recent events. Take a look.
The 3rd of March was a key turning point for several events or decisions in relation to some events that were supposed to take place actually this week and last weekend. The first one was this annual Honolulu Festival, which normally takes place this time in March for several days and participated by various cultural groups from Japan, which is the largest group. Also, you have Korea, China, even the Philippines. That had to be canceled, and that was a tough decision, frustrating a lot of cultural groups, including those from the Philippines. The second one is the Mariah Carey concert that was supposed to take place this week that got pushed further down later in the year in November because of travel concerns. Moving forward to March 6th, that's when Hawaii announced its first confirmed case of COVID-19, in which an elderly man, after cruising on the Grand Princess, which sailed through Hawaii to Mexico. From there, he flew back to Oahu, and then he became ill and had to be checked in at Kaiser Permanente in Honolulu, where he was pronounced to have been diagnosed COVID-19. He is still under isolation and under monitoring. 2 days later, on March 8th, a second presumptive case of COVID-19 was confirmed, in which another elderly man traveled to Washington State, already feeling ill, and then coming back here and been diagnosed also with COVID-19. Moving forward to March 10th, actually. Facilities like the Philippine Consulate General in Honolulu made the announcement that starting on the following Monday, March 16th, all their services will be by appointment only. Moving forward, until further notice, they will not receive any walk-ins. In addition to that, what they normally do in any given year is to visit these islands around Hawaii and even as far south as American Samoa, as part of their outreach when they provide services of various kinds to Filipino communities and those who need the services from the Philippine Consulate. That is temporarily suspended because of travel concerns. In essence, the state government has announced it will step up its efforts to test various communities throughout the state to determine whether there are other cases that are lingering out and about here in the Aloha State. So that's where we stand right now, and we continue to monitor the impact, one of which already involves the entire tourism industry. In fact, a report from the University of Hawaii is estimating that a ballpark figure of 6,000 jobs could be lost because of this virus outbreak that's going on around the world. And that's the snapshot situation that we have here in these islands. Reporting from Hawaii, I'm Alfred Asenas, Eagle News, 1 with 25.
Thank you, Alfred Asenas, reporting from our Hawaii Bureau. And that's the news for tonight. Join us online and here again tomorrow evening. I'm Alma Angeles, always 1 with 25. Good night.
Susunod na programa ay rated PG. Ito ay nangangailangan ng patnubay,